Hello, everybody. I am Dave, Blue Bears Games, and once again, we're doing another video. Today's video is Blues Brews. We're doing Commander style today, like I always do. And today's Commander is the Scarab God. Anybody who watched my previous videos and saw the Hour of Devastation booster box opening will recognize this. I pulled him and got extremely excited. I wanted to make this deck for a while. It's Zombie Tribal Scarab God, because what else would you do? While he himself is not a zombie, it's kind of like with my Perforos theory, that Perforos is a better leader of the goblins than, as well as with Scarab God for zombies, than any other legendary that you can come up with. Yes, people argue Krenko Mob Boss for goblins. Yeah, he could be good, but I like off, the off tribe leaders to be the leaders. So, I'll read him off to you. He's very hard to read. I wanted a regular Scarab God. I'm not going to lie, it's easy to read the regular Scarab God. But I'm really happy that I did get the invocation version. So I will read him to you. So he is 1 black, 1 blue, 3 of any. He is a legendary creature god. And his abilities, I'll actually get a little closer here, are the following. At the beginning of your upkeep, the Scarab God, or I'm sorry, it's hard to read without it actually focusing correctly, but okay. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. And his other ability is for a black, a blue, and 2 of any, with colon, meaning you can do it as many times as you want. Target creature card from a graveyard, so that's any graveyard. So you exile a creature, and you can create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So it's your opponent's graveyards as well as your own, and then when the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So I apologize that the quality today is not so great. It's been extremely dark and rainy here for the last 4 or 5 days. And it's not getting any better anytime soon, so unfortunately the lighting I'm dealing with is the best I can give you. So that's hopefully a better shot of his abilities. So, as I said, we are blue-black, so 2-color commander deck, and we are Zombie Tribal. This deck will run a little similar to the Morrow Gnawer, except for it has, if I had the ability to acquire Giza or Gissa, whatever you want to say, it would have run extremely similar to it, but I wanted something different. I do not have her anyway, so this is the version I came up with, which is Zombie Tribal with the actual commander being a little bit more damage friendly. So let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit here so we can get started on what we got. So I'll start with the lands like I always do. Command Tower, because if you don't, even in monocolor decks, you run a Command Tower. Underground Sea for the blue-black, OG Duel, Watery Grave, Sunken Hollow, which is I guess they call them Tango lands, Drowned Catacomb, Tainted Isle. I've found a new love for the Tainted lands. I wish I had more of them. Whenever I'm using black, these Tainted ones actually work very well. I'm kind of happy with those. They don't come into play tapped. If you don't have the Swamp in play, it still taps for colorless, so the Tainted lands were a really good addition for most of my decks. River of Tears, I did go ahead and acquire this recently. It's tapped to add a bleeder mana pool, and if you played a land this turn, you can add a black instead, so it's a controllable duel, but it doesn't come into play tapped. Polluted Delta, and then Unholy Grotto. It's a foil one. I acquired this a long time ago in a collection I bought. It taps to add a colorless or a black, and tap it, put a zombie card from your graveyard on top of your library so you can recur your undead. Nykthos. I went with Nykthos because a lot of the creatures are heavy black. A lot of them are 2 black to cast. And I wanted to be able to make a good amount of mana later in the game if it gets that far. And of course, no zombie deck in the entire game is worth its weight if it doesn't have Field of the Dead. Yes, it enters the battlefield tapped, but what it does is so much better than the adding the mana. Whenever Field of the Dead or another land enters the battlefield under control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. It's one of those things where I had to actually decide, do I have enough lands with different names to make this worth it? And I realized I did just on the non-basics that are black-blue. Strip Mine goes in every deck for me just because there's always that one land that's a pain. Same thing with Reliquary Tower. It's just because there's no maximum hand size. Anytime you can get two things out of one, with it not coming into play tapped, it adds a colorless, and it's not a color, but it's still no maximum hand size is very valuable in Commander to me. So it goes in just about any deck I can put it in. A Bazooka Bog, because we always want to blow up somebody's graveyard. And then a Witch's Cottage, because it counts as a swamp, so if I want to go fetch for a swamp, I can go for this one. When it enters tapped unless you can go 3 or more other swamps. And then when it enters you untapped, you may put a creature card from your graveyard on top of your library, so it worked like a one-time use of the Unholy Grotto. And then swamps. We're heavier into the swamps. I don't remember how many I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 swamps. And the amount of blue cards actually in this deck is kind of light, so I only added a couple of islands. I think it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And 5 islands on top of the duels that provide blue. So it's mostly black with a very small splashing of blue. So that was the mana base I went with for now. If something comes out later that might be better, I'll go with it. Blue and black don't have a lot of mana ramp, so I had to go with the artifact route. So obviously a Soul Ring. Expedition map, it's 1 to cast and then 2 and tap, and you can sacrifice it. And search for a land card. The land card is important. It doesn't have to be a basic land, that's what makes it important. Traveler's Amulet, because I ran out of other things that do the same effect. Sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land, reveal, put it in your hand, blah, 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 blah. Mind Stone, 2 to cast, tap to add a colorless. And then for later when I don't need it, I can stack it to draw a card. Armillary Sphere goes for 2 basics and puts them in my hand. So I've actually come to a new realization. I may have to go through some of my decks from previously. As I'm making new decks, I'm evolving my theories the way that I go. Armillary Sphere is definitely one of those ones where it goes in mono-colored and 2-color decks, but definitely not 3-color decks, because I'm noticing the amount of basics I'm putting in the 3-color decks is far less. And Armillary Sphere only works when you have a lot of basics, so that goes into 1 and 2-color decks. It's kind of like the Arcane Sting that doesn't go in anything for me unless it's a 3-color deck or more. So same thing with a card like this. I believe that I explained when I was doing the last one, Surveyor's Kite, I believe is what it's called. It goes and gets basic lands. This is basically the same card as Surveyor's Kite, except for it can flip. I don't want it to flip. I want it to actually take the lands out, but even if that's the case, I still get to use something else. When it flips, it turns into one of the more popular cards, Maze of Ith. So it turns into a Maze of Ith if I need it to. I would rather it go search for lands to thin out my deck and make the draws better for later. But it flips after there are, 7? Yeah, 7 or more lands. Not basics either, just 7 or more lands. And then Heraldic Banner for 2 reasons. I don't like 3 to cast mana rocks. I really do like the 2 to cast ones. At most, I don't want to go past 3, unless it's something really special like a Nyx Lotus or something, anything like that. But this, when it comes into play, you choose a color. It adds a color of the chosen color. So it'll add black most of the time, if not all the time. But it's a half anthem. I've explained this in the Morrow Gnawer deck. Creatures you control the chosen color get +1/+0. So it helps with... most likely I'll choose black, and it'll help with the commander as well. He'll actually be a bigger thing. I forgot to mention, he's actually not that bad as far as his stats. He's a 5/5 as well. So he's a 5/5 creature. That's pretty big. Alright. Next section will be the actual creatures. Mostly zombies, not all. I believe there's one thing in here. I have a pseudo combo, kind of. It's not infinite. I don't believe I put an infinite combo in here. I'll have to remember as I go, because I actually am working on 5 decks at the same time. This one just happened to finish first because it was 2 colors where the others are 3. So we start with Gravecrawler. I chose Gravecrawler because not only is he 1 to cast for a 2/1, just because he can't block doesn't mean anything. But you may cast him from your graveyard if you control a zombie, and you should control a bunch of them, so he should always be attacking, even if he dies, because he's only 1 black. There's ways to utilize that, I'm sure. Crypt Breaker, also 1 to cast for a 1/1, 2, so a black and 1 of any, tap it, discard a card, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, or I'm not really going to use that ability as much as I am the tap 3 untapped zombies you control, and then draw a card and lose a life. Blue does allow you to draw a lot of cards. Black also does, but I wanted to make it fit into the theme of this. I didn't want to just throw a lot of blue instant draw cards in here. Shepherd of Rot, 2 to cast for a 1/1. Tap him and each player loses 1 life for each zombie in play. It's also foil, which is always nice. So is the Gravecrawler. It was I believe this was either the buy a box at the time or it was the pre-release promo. I can't remember. Plague Bearer was actually the last addition to the deck. It's a 2 to cast 1/1. Double X and black, so for every 2 colorless, destroy target non-black creature with total casting cost equal to X. Again, that's why I wanted some extra oomph to my ability to make some mana. Alright, Diagraph Colossus was the last card that I acquired for the deck. It wasn't the last card I put in, but it was the last one that I actually had to get. This is part of the combo. It's not the biggest part, it's just a small portion of it. 3 to cast for a 2/2. When he enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on put a +1/+1 counter on it for each zombie in your graveyard. And whenever you cast a zombie spell, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. Unbreathing Horde, 3 to cast for a 0/0. It enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other zombie you control, and each zombie card in your graveyard, and if it would be dealt damage, prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter from it. So, if he's cast later in the game, he can be pretty beefy. So, Plague Belcher is a 3 to cast 5/4 menace, and when it enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. The hope is that you're targeting some token of some sort. Then whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses a life. So the point of him is to hope to, I guess it would be aristocrat your opponents down, but that's not the main point of this deck. The main point is to hope to get a zombie horde, as they call it, and hope that your commander's out so he can just, not just whittle, but literally just take your opponents down all the way. I thought about putting the ability to use Infect for the commanders and make it a little faster, but I really don't like doing that. So it's just a personal choice. Fleshbag Marauder, 3 to cast for a 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. Part of a loop. Same thing with the Diagraph Colossus, it's part of a loop. There are a bunch of Anthem-style creatures in here. They're lords, all of them. First one is Lord of the Accursed, the 3 to cast 2/3. Other zombies get +1/+1. And then for 2 and tap, he allows all zombies to gain menace until end of turn. Murderous Rider, because this is one of the best zombies they've made in a long time. He's a 3 to cast 2/3. You can use his adventure for 3 and destroy target creature or planeswalker and lose 2 life. And then he's a life-linking 2/3 himself, and when he dies, put him on the bottom of his owner's library. There are ways to shuffle so you can get him back. But either way, he's just value. He can kill something as the adventure. Then he can come into play as a nice 2/3 lifelinker. It's a pretty good card. Next, Anthem or Lord, as you will go ahead and call him, is Death Baron, 3 to cast for a 2/2. Skeletons you control and other zombies you control get +1/+1 and Death Touch. That's more important than anything, the Death Touch. Lord of the Undead, 3 to cast for a 2/2. All zombies, not just yours, get +1/+1. For 2, you can return target zombie from your graveyard to your hand. Not like the Unholy Grotto, which puts it on top of your library. I believe Unholy Grotto. You know what? I gotta check that. I can't remember which one it was. Unholy Grotto, where are you at? Yeah, on top of your library. That's what I thought. So, he gets it to your hand. So that's it's a little bit better. But if you want to just keep recurring zombies, both of them together work. This is Cemetery Reaper, 3 to cast for a 2/2, and other zombies you control get +1/+1. Another Lord. For 3, exile target creature card from a graveyard. This is important. The from a graveyard is where I was trying to be. I didn't want to be from my own because I wanted to recur all the zombies I had. And then put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Zombie Master, while not an Anthem-style Lord, is still a Lord. He's also a zombie. They have the Oracle text on him has been changed to zombie. 3 to cast, 2/3. All zombies gain Swamp Walk, which black is very prominent in Commander because it's one of the better colors for Commander. If it was something like Planeswalk, it would be less relevant, but Swamp Walk is more relevant. And then for a black, Regenerate. So regeneration isn't used all that often in a lot of things, so the regeneration is a bonus. Vengeful Dead, 4 to cast for a 3/2. Whenever he or another zombie is put into a graveyard from play, each opponent loses a life. Again, more aristocrat style pinging. Risen Executioner, I actually had to go out and acquire this. I did not have this. It's a 4 to cast, 4/3, can't block. Anthem style of other creatures you control get +1/+1. And then you may cast Risen Executioner from your graveyard if you pay 1 additional mana more for each card, for each other creature card in your graveyard. Excuse me. Alright, Undead Warchief, 4 to cast, 1/1. I believe they reprinted him in the mystery boxes. I was sure hoping they get a foil one because I think that it was one of the foils. I did not get one, so I just had to use the regular one. So it's a 4 to cast, 1/1. Zombie spells you play cost 1 less to play, so they just are 1 generic mana less. And zombies you control get +2/+1, so a mega anthem. The non-zombie in here is Kalidas, the Trader of Get. He's a 4 to cast, 3/4. He's part of the little combo I have. He's a lifelinker, and if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, it's exiled instead, and I get to put a 2/2 zombie into play. And then his ability is for 3, sacrifice another Vambi, Vambi. Another vampire or zombie, and put 2 +1/+1 counters on him. You have to excuse me, I'm a little under the weather still from... Our weather here is crap. It's been hot then cold, so it's messing with my system. So the part of this that I wanted to point out was it's the sacrifice another zombie thing. I'll get to why that's going to combo in a minute. I used to actually play this on the Magic Duels on the Xbox, and I'll explain it later. I'll pull the cards out and show you. Next is Josu Vest, and I actually chose him because he's a 4 to cast, 4/5. The rest doesn't really matter, but it gets better. He's a 4 to cast, 4/5 that has Menace and then has a kicker. While the kicker is rather high, and I don't understand, I don't think it's going to happen. When he gets kicked, he enters the battlefield with 8 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Menace. So, I'm not 100% sure if it'll ever go off, but it's good. Gary needs to go in any deck that's black, that's heavy black, let alone a zombie deck, but the fact that he's a zombie already makes it a bonus. When he enters, each opponent loses X life, where X is equal to devotion to black. If you didn't notice, there's a lot of mana symbols here. Double black, double black, double black, double black. There's a lot of black mana symbols here, so that's why Nykthos as well. My devotion should be pretty high. Geth, Lord of the Vault. 6 to cast, 5/5, Intimidate. So basically fear. For black and X, put target artifact or creature card with converted mana cost X or less from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. I like messing with other people's graveyards, so he had to go in. Gravespawn Sovereign is 6 to cast for a 3/3. He's a zombie lord, even though he's not an Anthem lord. Tap 5. Untap zombies you control. Put target creature from a graveyard into play under your control. I added that late. The other non-zombie in here is Grave Titan. 6 to cast for a 6/6 Death Toucher. This one came from the mystery packs. When Grave Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, put 2 2/2 zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. Diagraph Captain's the first blue card you've seen. It's actually gold, but it has blue in it. He's a 3 to cast 2/2 Death Toucher. Other zombies get +1/+1 that you control. And whenever another zombie you control dies, target opponent loses a life. I wish that was each opponent, but you can't, beggars can't be choosers. Alright, Prized Amalgam. 3 to cast 3/3. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the end step. The main engine to the combos that I was speaking of starts here. Giza and Giraffe, or Giza and Giraffe, I don't know how to say it. 4 to cast 4/4, not a zombie, but it's the engine starts with this card. 4/4, so at least it's got a nice, set of stats. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then during each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature from your graveyard. That enables a lot of stuff to go on. I can actually use my graveyard as a partially second hand for all the zombies, and if you didn't notice, that's a lot. That's quite a lot of zombies. Metallic Mimic. 2 to cast 2/1. Enters the battlefield. Choose a creature type. Obviously, it's going to be zombie here. It's also a zombie in addition to it being a shapeshifter. And each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So it makes them grow permanently. And then Adaptive Automaton, like I said, you would notice that from the Morrow and Gnawer deck, you'll see a couple of things that repeat just because these 2 cards, they go into any tribal deck, and since it's zombie tribal, it has to go in. And it's the same thing. It enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and then all other creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1. So it's a Lord Anthem. So those are the creatures that I have chosen for this one. Now, keep in mind, there are some cards I would have loved to put in here. This deck is not optimum. It has not been completely decked out and made super strong. It's just for fun. Okay. I didn't go out and get the legendary mono black Giza that you can sacrifice something to make X/2/2 zombie tokens. I also do not have access to the blue-white one that you can make a 1/1 token. I don't have them. I didn't get them in any of my collections I bought. I didn't open them in any of the stuff they're in. I just don't have them, and they're too expensive for me to buy. I originally started this whole theory off with I won't buy anything just with what I have. And once the pandemic hit, I realized that I'm not getting anything. I'm not actually able to acquire much anyway. I buy cards that are $1, $2, maybe 3 or 4, but nothing more. I don't want to spend all my money just on $18 cards. I'd like to trade for them, like I've mentioned before, but I will not buy them. Alright. Rant over. Up next, more anthems to go in here that match Liliana's Mastery. Other zombies you control, or actually just zombies you control, get +1/+1. And when it enters, create 2 black zombie tokens for 5. Icon of Ancestry. When it enters, choose a creature type. Zombie, obviously. Those creatures get +1/+1. And then for 3, I can look at the top 3 cards of my library, reveal a creature card of the chosen type, and put it in my hand, blah, blah, blah. Vanquisher's Banner, 5 to cast. When it enters, choose a creature type again. They get +1/+1. And whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. This one actually is in here not as an anthem. This is actually my hope to... These 2 are actually not anthems for me. While, yes, the anthem ability is great, it's the ability to get cards into my hand that makes them more valuable to me. And then, of course, Coat of Arms, because any tribal deck worth its, weight would have Coat of Arms if it can. Slivers really love this card. So each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least 1 creature type with it. So they can get really big really fast. So that was my additional anthems to go in there with benefits. Up next are the Planeswalkers. You'll notice that Morrow and Gnawer didn't have Planeswalkers, or have many. This one has a bunch. And they're all the same girl. They're all lilies. They're all different forms of Liliana. This is the creature into a Planeswalker version. This is her Heretical Healer. 3 to cast, and she's a 2/3 lifelinker. And then when another non-token creature you control dies, I exile her, return her to the battlefield transformed, and then create a 2/2 zombie token. And this is where it gets interesting. She turns into the Defiant Necromancer. Each player discards a card for her +2. Return target non-legendary creature with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield for a -X on her loyalty counters. And then -8, you get an emblem with whenever another creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. This is the other piece. I gotta tell you, when you get her ultimate off, if you get her ultimate off, the amount of shenanigans that starts. So it's her with her emblem. You use Kalida's Trader of Get to be able to grow him, because he's a lifelinker, so you're able to get some life back. You're killing your own so that they can come back. And everybody else's stuff that when they die, comes back to you. Okay? So when you don't have Kalida's out, it works because it's not exiled. When you do have it out, you can do your own. So you sacrifice your own to get them to come back into play at the end of the turn, and it starts a lot of chain reactions. So just keep that in mind. One day I may actually fishbowl this deck to show you how it works and how much you can get back just from that. I don't think I have any of my Magic Duels matches where I actually show this. I can show this live just on that. It's actually pretty devastating because you can control the board's creatures. Unless, of course, you're facing a creatureless deck, then it doesn't really help you. But you still have the ability to do your own. So one of the things I'll tell you, though, is a lot of the creatureless decks, like say you're going up against a Niv Mizzet deck, if you can kill the Niv and get it, it's way better. So let's just keep moving on, though. There's a lot of things to go on with that. This is the other one I wanted to do. I actually pulled this one from the Alluro deck and changed it out with a Teferi so that I could put it in this deck because it deserves to be here more. Liliana the Last Hope, 3 to cast, 3 loyalty. First one is up to one target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. The -2 I won't really be using all that much. Put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. The whole point of her is to get to this -7. You can emblem with at the beginning of your upkeep. Put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. The whole point of her is to get to that. Liliana Untouched by Death is 4 to cast for 4 loyalty to start. Our first ability is put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If at least one of them is a zombie card, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Kind of works with this deck. The next ability is target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of zombies you control. And her -3, or her last ability, is you may cast zombies from your graveyard this turn. So a lot of good stuff in that one. Next one is Vess. 5 to cast, 5 loyalty to start. Target player discards a card. Search your library for a card, then shuffle it. Shuffle your library and put it on top of it. Or -8, put all creature cards from all graveyards into play under your control. Does a lot of stuff I want there. Yes, Majesty, 5 for 5 loyalty. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, then put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. -3 is return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So, for instance, Gisa, I can actually return to the battlefield and make it a zombie as well. And destroy all non-zombie creatures. So a lot of stuff I want to do there. Although Liliana is pretty much fit the theme of this deck. Dreadhorde General is 6 to cast for 6 loyalty. And she has a static ability of whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. And then create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for +1. And her -4 is each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And her ultimate is when each opponent chooses a permanent, they control of each permanent type and sacrifice the rest. The non-Liliana ones is Narset, part of her Veils. 3 loyalty. I'm sorry, 3 to cast for 5 loyalty. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. That's just to limit my opponent's ability to get answers. The -2 is look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in any order. I won't be using the ability all that much. I just want to limit the ability for them to draw more cards. And then Ashiok, Dream Render, 3 to cast for 5 loyalty as well. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. Again, this one's more for limiting their ability to go search for answers. Target player also, for -1, puts the top 4 cards of the library into the graveyard and then exile each opponent's graveyard. Yeah, the ability is actually kind of good in Commander, so I went ahead and added both of those in there. So, again, not a lot of blue, it's just a lot of splashing so that I can get some stuff in here that I wanted to put in here. This is the defense suite of cards that I could come up with. I don't own Damnations, and if I did, it would go in every deck that I could put it in. I also don't have a lot of... I'm starting to run out of cards. I've explained that before. Some of the decks are starting to lose a little bit of power based on my availability of cards, and I don't really feel like buying a whole bunch. So what I have is what I have left. We start with Finale of Eternity for 2 black and X. Destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness X or less. If X is 10 or more, return all creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it does destruction. It kind of gets rid of some problems if I need to, and it also can bring my stuff back. So Bantu's Last Reckoning, again, another card that you guys, if you watch the the Hour of Devastation booster box opening, you'll have seen I grabbed this. 3 to cast, destroy all creatures and lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. Small price to pay for board wipe. Call to the Grave, 5 to cast enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-zombie creature. And at the beginning of the end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, sacrifice Call to the Grave. So it's to help. I'm going to have all zombies. They're not. You know, I just want to be able to keep the death going. Life's Finale. I was kind of hoping that I had the other version of this. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was 6 to cast as well. Destroy all creatures, then search target opponent's library for up to 3 creature cards, put them into their graveyard, then that player shuffles their library. This actually ends up, I didn't want this at first, it actually ends up working better than I actually anticipated when I started reading off some of the cards that I put in here. It was all about going into my opponent's graveyard, so now I get to pick and choose which ones I want. And of course, Cyclonic Rift, everybody's favorite blue card. So, there are 2 blue cards I put in any deck that has blue. It's Cyclonic Rift. I have a bunch of them, so thankfully I have them. And then Ristic Study, because I have a bunch of them. So, you have to get used to it. It is what it is. So, alright. Last section is utility stuff. I always put in at least 1 artifact that's an equipment. Let me actually go ahead and start over this section. I don't know what happened there. I had some technical difficulties when it came to the recording. So I have to actually start this section over, and I'll just splice it into the video after that. So I start with a Swift Foot Boots. I always get this name wrong. It's so that I can protect either my commander, or for this deck it would be Giza and Giraffe, or Giraffe, whatever you want to call it. It's to help protect whatever I need to protect. If it's a combo piece or if it's the commander, whatever, it's great. It gives hexproof and haste. Haste doesn't really do a whole lot for this deck. If it was a major attack deck, it would be fine, but this is more combo-y. So, Illusionist Bracers. So I did have a whole lot of options when I was putting the deck together. I'm running out of them, like I've mentioned just a couple minutes ago. It's 2 to cast, 3 to equip, and whenever an ability of an equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy the ability, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Scarab God's ability is an activated ability upon your upkeep, and if you can get that to go off more than once a turn, say you have 10, 15 zombies out, that's, 20 to 30 damage that you can do just on your upkeep. So, it's a long shot. This may be removed from the board before you even get a chance to equip it, but it's still a good option to use. Grimoire of the Dead. For the cast artifact. This is actually put in here as a diversion. I'm not really hoping to use it, but I'm hoping to get rid of somebody's removal with it. So it's for the cast. 1 and tap, discard a card, put a study counter on it. Remove 3 study counters from it and sacrifice it. Put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield under control. They're black zombies in addition to their other colors and types. So, again, it's going to get targeted as soon as it hits the board. You're never going to get to use it. I'm sure it'll be one of the hardest targets things. It's diversion so that I waste their resources. I'd love to use it, but it ain't going to happen. Dark Salvation. 1 black, double X. Target player puts X/2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. Then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each zombie that player controls. Your hope is to target something like a grave crawler. That doesn't matter. You can just bring it back for 1 black. A token of some sort. And then you can put a lot of black zombies in. Again, this is why I chose cards that help get my mana up a little bit. You'll see another one here in a second, but the first part of it is Nykthos. I was hoping to be able to utilize that, get a lot of black out of it, but, it helps with the double X's because there are 2 of them in here. Vampiric Rites. This is my way of using black's own abilities to draw cards. This is a little different. It's 1 black and then 2, sacrifice a creature. You gain 1 life and draw a card. Usually with black, you lose a life, but I'll take the gain life. Dreadhorde Invasion. To the cast artifact. It's not the fairy one, but it'll do in a pinch. It's an enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and you amass 1. It's not the one with the fairies, and the only reason why I don't like this as much as the one with fairies, other than the fact that that one's one of the greatest cards made ever, in my opinion anyway. Amass doesn't put a new token out, it just adds to the one that already exists. So, it's not as good, but So Amass just says put a 0/0 army zombie army token on the battlefield, and then if there already is one on the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever this is the part I like. Whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink. So with all the zombie lords and all the zombie tokens you can create, this actually works. It doesn't say army, it just says zombie token, so that you can gain a lot of life with just that card out. Phyrexian Arena, I need like 7 more of these things. The reprint of this was fabulous. It was great timing. At the beginning of upkeep, you draw a card and you lose a life. It's just, as far as black cards go, it's the epitome of how black runs, and I love it, and it is very helpful. Endless Ranks of the Dead. For the cast enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put X/2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is half the number of zombies you control rounded down. So if you control 10, you put 5. If you control 11, you put 5. Simple as that. And you put them for basically free onto the battlefield. Combine that with the Liliana that puts out other 2/2s, and you're good to go. The other part of why I want to be able to generate mana, this is the other card that I acquired from a friend of mine to kind of help with the double X costs and all that stuff. Black Market is a 5 to cast enchantment. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you put a charge counter on Black Market, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add black to your mana pool for each counter on it. With the graveyard shenanigans going on, I'm sacrificing things are dying, coming back. This can get pretty filled pretty fast. Zombie Apocalypse, because there is no zombie tribal deck that should not have Zombie Apocalypse in it because of the name. Just because of the name, but it actually does something pretty cool. 6 to cast. Return all zombies from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped, then destroy all humans. What better flavor can you get than that? Kill all humans, make them zombies. Got it. Since this deck is as I've said, zombie tribal, it worked great. Another card that I put in every blue deck. I don't care if I splash it for just this card. It's for 6 study. If you don't know it, just read it. I don't have to explain to you why it's good. Blue Sun Zenith because I wanted more card draw, but I didn't want it to be like single card draw. I wanted like massive card draw just to get more zombies into my hand and into my grave. I wanted it to make an impact. There is another way I could do it. I could either get a Brain Geyser, or I can get the equivalent of Brain Geyser. There's another one that's 2 blue and X. I liked Blue Sun Zenith because it was an instant, and it shuffles back in so you can reuse it again. It's kind of why I went with this version instead. The 3 blue is heavy, but I don't have a lot of blue stuff to cast anyway, and I have a lot of stuff that does create blue, so I went with Blue Sun Zenith instead. And finally, the reason why, other than the fact that I wanted to use the Amonkhet invocation style of Scarab God, Rooftop Storm, you may cast all zombies. You may pay 0 is how it's worded, rather than pay the mana cost for zombie creature spells you cast. There is no better there is no better reduction in cost than there is 0. Unless you can find a way to cast things and you get mana back. Being able to cast all my stuff for free sounds like a great plan to me. It sets you up for a lot of good fun and shenanigans. So that's my version of the Scarab God. He is not optimal. There are other cards I could have put in here that would have been, a little bit more powerful. I would love to get some Damnations and stuff like that, but I don't own them, and I would love to trade for them if anybody has them for trade. So, anyway, that is Scarab God Blues Brews Commander Blue-Black. If you have any questions, I always tell you this, go ahead and put them in the section below in the comments, or go to the Facebook page. It's Blue Bears Games on Facebook. It's not hard to find me. I have a link to it in the comments or in the description. I'll have that below. And again, I will answer anything that you guys want to ask. I have 3 decks coming down the pike. I actually started doing Modrotha, which I've explained. I also have Varel of the Whole Kate, I believe is the full name, but it's Varel. And I actually just started putting together NMR. So I'm still working on a whole bunch of stuff. I wanted to point out something else as well. I did go out and I acquired some new stuff for my collection that was storage related. So if you didn't notice, I went out and bought a whole bunch of new sleeves. So all the decks that you've seen in the past actually were re-sleeved into these. They are Dragon Shield mats, the black obviously, or this is Slate I used for this deck. I got a whole bunch of different ones, and when I go over the decks, you'll see them. I also went out and I bought myself some deck boxes. These are the Ultra Pro ones. I like them. They actually unfold all the way out so that you have the ability to grab them by both sides. So these I actually highly recommend. And the only reason why I had to do that is because my old ones are starting to fall apart, and I didn't think that was going to happen, but they did. So if you guys are looking for something, there's a lot of space extra left over in them when I put these back in. And these are 100 cards, single sleeved. I don't do the double sleeved, but they fit in there rather nicely. I'm 100% sure that they'll fit even better with no space left if they were double sleeved. But I'll go ahead and show you how nice and comfy they sit in there. There's a little bit of space left over so I can put the extra sleeves in there and any zombie tokens I want. So highly recommend them. I love these things. I didn't think I was going to, just because I'm not really fond of change when it comes to my storage, but they worked out really well. So just another little tip, if you guys are looking for something, I highly recommend them. I believe this is the Ultra Pro ones. Yeah, it's the Ultra Pro ones. I'm looking currently for the Ultimate Guard ones because my other deck case does not fit these at all. So the Ultimate Guard one does fit, and they're nice Xenoskin ones, but regardless. So anyway, sorry, got off track. Don't want to make the video any longer than it already is. So like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, have a good one.